Alright, getting back into this, and we're now going to look at some maybe discriminatory practices. Now, as you can tell here, American victor of a Jap raider, and you have these two, and they're not Japanese, but they're wearing something really different. And so what is that? The Mexican Americans, mainly the youth, begin to wear something that's called a zoot suit. Zoot suit had the high-waisted pants, they had the wallet chain, they had the hat, and they had the long jacket. This is kind of actually seen as being unpatriotic to an extent. And so what happened is the zoot suits, Mexican Americans would go into the bars, and they were more or less dancing with the sailors' women. And so when the sailors would come for leave and would go to see their girlfriends, whatever, they were having to contend with the Mexican American, the zoots. And so here you have two Pachuco suitors. They've been kind of stripped to their underwear of their thing, and they're left in the street. They're beaten and they're humiliated. And these were called the zoot suit riots. It just basically refers to the negative treatment of the Mexican Americans at this time. And so, kind of interesting there. Now, the next fear we have is what? Waiting for the signal from home. And you can see 3 states in particular: Washington, Oregon, California. And yes, this is Dr. Seuss, and yes, this is horribly racist, but giving them TNT, right? And the idea is that these Japanese Americans who were born in America still had some type of honorable or commitment to the Japanese, and that they would commit some type of sabotage. So fearing this, and it got so intense and crazy that it really kind of intensified. Here we have this woman here, Japs keep moving. This is a white man's neighborhood, and it got crazy. So much so that President FDR issued an executive order. And the executive order basically said all persons of Japanese ancestry living in the following areas were going to be removed from their home, and they were going to be placed in internment camps. So for right there, for Japanese internment, I need you to understand that FDR orders Japanese Americans from their homes to be put in kind of an internment camp. Now, how is an internment camp different from a concentration camp? An internment camp is you lived there, but you were allowed to leave, etc. But you were observed at all time. And so there were guards there with guns, etc. And it's ordered by Executive Order 9066. So you need to know that FDR ordered Executive Order 9066, put Japanese out of their home and into camps. And that's a difficult thing to understand. I understand. Now, here is a internment camp. You can see they have them there, a little bit of freedom. There are some guards, but nonetheless, nobody would want to live like this. You have a little bit of freedom, as I said, but nonetheless, you want to live in your house, and your property is being taken from you. And okay, now this is a map, more or less, of relocation centers, assembly centers, isolation centers, etc. And so the relocation centers, these big triangles, were the camps. There were some here in kind of southern Arkansas, a lot here. The biggest one, and the one where you can still kind of go see it, is Manzanar, and you can see it, and they basically moved them out and different things like that, trying to get them to the relocation. Now, if you notice, they excluded, right, all of these places on the coast. They didn't want to have anybody too close to the idea there. And so that was just a neat little map I found I wanted to share with you, okay? Now, one man in particular decided that this was against his First Amendment. He said, I was born in America, this is ridiculous. His name is Fred Korematsu, or Korematsu. And so Mr. Korematsu decides to sue the United States, sue the president, sue everybody he can on the grounds that he is being treated unfairly and his rights are being violated. And it's a major court case, very similar to the World War I one of Shank versus the United States. If you remember, in that one they decided that they could limit your freedom of speech in a time of war due to clear and present danger. And so what happens here, and we'll get back to that in a second, the United States decides in favor of themselves. When given the idea of which is more important, the personal freedom of Korematsu and other Japanese Americans or the security of the United States, they ruled in favor of the security of the United States. We now see a trend, correct? Palmer raids, Shank versus the United States, Korematsu versus the United States. Anytime there is a question of national security versus personal freedom, national security, the wants of the many will win out over the wants of the few. And that's what happens, okay? Now, just as a kind of side note here, Fred Korematsu was actually recognized by President Bill Clinton, received a Presidential Medal of Freedom in recognition of what was going on. And actually, previous to that, in the Reagan administration, the survivors, the children who were in these internment camps, were actually given reparations. Basically, they were given payment for having to endure the internment. Now, as I said, they were children, so they had to be present. A lot of people sit there and they go, well, why did they not do that for the slaves? Well, we're now right here where they actually start giving reparations for the Japanese. It was in the 1980s, and by that point, somebody who was a slave or somebody who had lived in those conditions were probably few and far between. So that's what's going on there, okay? Make sure I'm good here. Yep. Now the next little section we're going to talk about women and what was going on with that. All right?